People always ask how I balance my family life with 400 shows a year. I'm just doing what I love with the people I love. It's my magic life.
I like Wes Iseli. I like everything about him.
All right, guys, we're back. And this week we have, well, I run a Facebook group, and I get people from all over the world saying, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. Today, this lady is an author, filmmaker, TV personality, podcaster, entrepreneur. She's got a list of things that she does and she's into, and I'm like, tell me more. Everybody, it's Linda Eastburn. What's happening? How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's a good day in the Ozarks. I'm way back here in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, nice.
What's the weather like? It's beautiful here today.
It's beautiful. No, it's beautiful here. I mean, it's cooled down. We did have a really hot spell for a while, and now it's cooled down some. So yeah, it's really nice.
Awesome. All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I don't even know where to start. You have so many things going on.
Well, first of all, we're going to get into a lot of my intuitive, stuff that's happened to me, but I can say that I've been a real estate investor, an entrepreneur, had a real estate company for many, many, many years. And that was something that my intuition was with me all the way in doing a lot of the investing that I did. And we had a real estate brokerage as well. We sold to other people and had a few other people with us. Mostly we worked with investors though. So that's the initiation of the entrepreneurship of my life started with real estate investing. So that was the beginning point. We're talking years ago. I'm pretty old at this point. So we're talking back in the 80s when I started doing that. So it was a good time for individuals to embark on some real estate investing. It was just a really good time. And it was really, really good to us. But about 10 years into that, I decided I want to explore some other things. So I started taking some classes. Like I said, my intuition had kind of been with me all along. So I wanted to know more about that. How does that work? What can you do with it? What does that entail? I mean, I'd had some really interesting moments. So I took a meditation class, and also that class taught me focus, concentration, all of this stuff. And I really stuck with the lessons, and they were rigid. I often refer to it as the boot camp of self-awareness, because you had to do these exercises every single day. But I had some time, so I could devote to that. And I was sitting okay financially, so I didn't have to just, be at the grind on every little thing that I did, which was always my goal in being an entrepreneur, was to be able to do what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, the way I wanted to do it, not have money stand in the way. So that was my goal. And I achieved that fairly young. So I was able to do a lot of fun things, and a lot of things that just interested me. But this whole intuitive thing really, really drew me in, because there again, it had been somewhat the story of my life. So I really devoted myself to doing that. From there, I went on and became a hypnotherapist and worked with people with regressions and things like that. But also I found, and I was teaching that too, but I found that, with hypnosis, you're just kind of on the sidelines. You're the one, just asking these really mundane questions all the time, or giving these suggestions to people all the time. And I quickly learned that I'm not a practitioner. I'm not one to go into an office every day and do the same thing over and over and over again. I'm an explorer, an adventurer. I like new information. I like new things. So I got involved with a UFO group. Now, this is really going yet another direction. I got involved with the UFO group, and it was really high level times when people were writing books on abductions. This was the heyday of that. This was early 90s. So because I was a hypnotherapist and I was involved with this MUFON group, they decided to shuffle leftover people to me with regressions. They had one guy that was doing them, but they were just swamped with people that, I think I've been abducted. I didn't have an opinion about whether people had or had not been abducted. I just had the skill of doing hypnosis. So I found that was really fascinating, because, this was a whole new ball game of gathering information from people that wasn't about, passing a test, or some past life that you can't prove. Not that you can prove that someone's been abducted, but it was still an interesting exploratory kind of adventure. So that added another kind of a piece of information into what it was doing.
Would their story change if they went under? I mean, that would be proof if their story changed a lot. Wouldn't
Well,
that?
they didn't have full conscious memory oftentimes. This is what I found when I started in hypnosis. This was really interesting. Before I even got involved with the UFO group, people were coming to me and, they would have some reason that they needed to have hypnosis. I was going to needed to pass a test, or they needed concentration skills or memory skills, or, whatever. And then they would start just talking about waking up as a child and seeing these strange lights, outside the bedroom window on the ground. And it was like a craft or some weird thing. And I'm thinking, well, this is strange. Why are you bringing this up? I wasn't even aware that these regressions were happening out there and the books were starting to come out on the subject matter. I didn't even know enough about UFOs to know that much. But when I started going to the group, I began to understand, oh, I understand. So they have some small inkling that something might have happened. And then they'll read a book, like Whitley Strieber's book. I don't remember the name of his first book, but Communion, I think it was. They'll read a book of some sort of information about it, and then they start correlating. Oh, wait a minute. I remember having some kind of a strange encounter or a strange memory of lights, or just these vague, strange, things happen to them as a child. And of course, if you start building that in your mind, you can convince yourself that it's real or not. But they would become really curious to know if it was real or not. So they would come to try to go under hypnosis and try to find some kind of memory in their database of information off of these little tiny bits and pieces of information that they did retain as memory as a child, or even as an adult. I mean, sometimes there were people that would be traveling cross country, maybe a couple, they'd be driving late at night or something on a trip, just a vacation, and they'd see some kind of a strange light in the sky. They couldn't explain it. And then both of them would have, just kind of like this weird, eerie sense that they had missing time, or they just couldn't remember this long stretch of highway that they knew they drove, but they didn't know what happened during that period of time, maybe hours and hours of it. So it would be things like that I would get the regressions, and so like, well, let's explore, let's see. I don't think hypnosis is a truth serum, but it might get them closer to some piece of information that's missing.
Well, I think it could be a truth serum. What I was thinking was, hey, I've been abducted, Natalie. I'm going to write a book. Then you put that person under hypnosis, ask them questions what they wrote down, and their story changes. I don't know.
Yeah, no one that I worked with ever wrote a book or even got close to it.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I answered the question. I don't really know. It wasn't the case in my case. Sometimes it would answer questions. More times than not, it was difficult for them to get any kind of information, or it was so scary to them that they couldn't handle it, and we had to come out of the hypnotic state.
Well, as a magician, I always thought hypnosis was just people playing along on stage. I always thought it was just bunk, right? But I have a magician friend of mine who is an eye surgeon, and he had a 7-year-old kid that needed emergency surgery, but he couldn't give the kid medication for some reason, heart issue or something. He hypnotized the kid to perform eye surgery on him. I'm like, well, if this guy that I look up to and love like a dad told me that, it must be true. There's that than I realize. Yeah.
The man that I studied with went through 2 major surgeries and only used hypnosis. He had an amazing ability, to control his own mind. So we know that's true. I mean, I know that's true. As to, when you get into a really, really deep state, the somnambulistic state, you don't even remember anything. You're completely absent of any conscious awareness whatsoever. It's like those deep states of sleep. You just have no awareness what's going on.
Wow.
That's crazy.
All right, so I didn't know we were getting into aliens that quick.
Well, you asked. I'm giving you the chronological.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So, all right, so intuition. I guess we're going back to intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was about that same time that I started really cultivating what I could do, psychically. Now I call it intuition because it's a much kinder word. Psychic just has hoax written all over it, and charlatan everywhere. But I was one of these people that, I wasn't making a living at this. I spent 6 years developing the skill, but I wasn't charging any money, for doing it. I was just trying to see what I could do with it. Was it something I could trust? Now, there again, it had been something that had happened to me most of my life. I'd had lots and lots of intuitive impressions. So I knew that it was present, but could I do it on demand? Could I do it, in really tight circumstances when you're under anxiety? Could you do it in situations like that? So I would test it, but I tell you, one time, we were at a movie at a theater, rather large one, and suddenly they pulled everyone out of the theater into the hall, and someone was, everyone was like, "What are we doing?" It was a tornado was in the area, so they were putting everyone in protective space. Well, I was a little nervous about that. You don't want this huge concrete building crumbling down on top of you in the hallway of a theater. Not exactly super safe. So I just intuitively started looking because I knew I could see things, So I started feeling my way through what was going on out there in the real world of the weather situation. I saw two tornadoes, actually. I saw one that was on the north side of town following a major roadway, an interstate that went to the north side, which was quite a distance from where we were. We were on the south side of the city. But there was another one coming, and it was really pretty close to where we were. And I could see it, but all of a sudden, then I got this impression that's like, oh, it's lifted, it's done, it's over. Just it was like that. It went from fear to complete calm. And within just a few minutes, they came down the hall and said, "You can go back in, it's all done, it's completed." Now, I didn't know at that time if there were actually two tornadoes or one tornado or, what was going on. All I knew was they pulled us out because of a tornado, and the tornado warning had lifted. When I got home and listened to the news, sure enough, there were two tornadoes. One was right where I saw on the north side, one on the south side. I presumed the one on the south side was there because it was close to where we were, and they wouldn't have pulled us out of the theater if it hadn't been semi close to where we were. So, but anyway, those were things that would happen under like really, really, nervous kind of conditions. And so, I could begin to kind of work with it in a way that I could ask a question and get an answer. And so I started doing that often. Now I remember one time, and this was really kind of fun. We just bought a new house, and it was a little bit out in the country, and we hadn't moved in yet, but I decided one morning I was just going to take a load of, carload of stuff over there. It wasn't very much, but something, just to go in and do whatever. Now earlier that day, my husband had left to work somewhere else in town. And he said he wouldn't be back at that house until late afternoon. We already knew this. Okay, so that was his schedule. This was about, it was probably around 9 or so when I went over there that morning. And I shut the doors, lock everything, walk out to the car, get in the car, and realize, oh my gosh, I don't have my keys. And I don't have the keys to get back in the house, nor do I have the keys to my car. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, okay, I can walk the several miles to someone's house, see if they're home, try to find a phone. This is before cell phones. This was in the 90s as well. Or I can just try to connect and see when my husband for sure will be here. Now, he didn't have any awareness of this. It was just me. But I would just connect with him, or I did just connect with him and asked him, what time are you going to be here? And I heard in his voice, I should be there by 10:34. Now that's a really specific time frame, 10:34. That was about 45 minutes or so from the time that I was sitting there. So, well, I think I'm just going to wait it out and see if he shows up. 10:34, he pulls in the drive. So that was how specific it could get. It was really kind of spot on. Now it wasn't always right. I don't want to indicate that it was, because it wasn't. When it was dead wrong, it was dead wrong. When it was right, it was right. I started doing a few little things for other people, just to see if I could, could do this with others, not just myself, my family, for my own safety, like the tornado. So as I started doing it with other people, it was kind of funny because I'm really a stickler for, can I trust this? Is this right or is this wrong? So I didn't want feedback from them. So many psychics sit there and they want you, sit in front of you and you go, yeah, yeah, because that kind of tells you if you're right or wrong. It's like, well, okay, this isn't going to prove anything. So what I wanted to do was just have complete silence. I really preferred not to ever meet the person. I did a lot of sessions by phone. I just preferred to just look at things independent of any input from anyone, anywhere, anytime, any place. So I found out I was fairly good at what I was doing. Then I went to a UFO conference and heard about remote viewing. Now, this was before the remote viewing ever became declassified in the US. The US people in remote viewing were not writing books yet because they couldn't. It was classified. But this man was, he was a reporter. He was writing for a magazine, and he'd gone to Russia. Well, Russia's real big on psychic stuff. They're just all over the place with that. So he had interviewed these, I think it was 3 or 4 scientists who had worked for the Russian government. And I don't know that they called it remote viewing, but that's what it was. And they were using it for a spy technique, to see what they could see as far as, bases go and submarines or whatever, that they were wanting to look at. So as he's telling me this, I'm thinking, wow, this meditative group that I was studying with, they were more into, self-awareness and spiritual enlightenment, kind of a spiritual kind of experience, even though being intuitive with that was part of it. But it wasn't as concrete physical as, wow, you're talking about military people using the psychic capacity to literally look at bases. So this also, got my attention, because I'm an adventurer, I'm an explorer. I like to research things and see what I can do. So I came home from that conference, and I didn't have a hypnotic conductor to help me. It was just me by myself there. But I decided that, okay, what can I look at that would be physical, that I could, then prove to myself that I'd actually been there, actually seen that. So I decided to use houses. Now, I know I'm in real estate, but Springfield, has a population of about 200,000. So, there was a lot of houses that I wouldn't have been able to tell you off the top of my head, or even subconsciously, because I haven't been down every street in the city. So what I did was I took the phone book. This was back when we had, literal, dial-up phones. And I opened the phone book, and if there's a number there and an address, I'm assuming there's a house there, right? So I got an address. I picked an address, and I decided, okay, I'm just going to try this. I told myself to be in the street looking at the front of the house and just describe what I saw. And when I first did this, I connected with the house, and that was my target. And I first looked at it, and there was a baby blue colored house came up, but every part of my intuition was saying, no, that's not the right house. Back out of this, go away. So I put the baby blue house over to the side and went back in, repeated the address of the house again. And I came into it really close. I was not very obedient to my suggestion that I be in the middle of the street. I came into it where I was so close, I could see the runs and the paint, I thought it was white paint. Or a light gray. It was a very light color paint, but I could see the runs. So I backed off and went to what I thought was the middle of the street and just looked at it and started describing one thing at a time. Black roof, 1-car garage, tiny little sidewalk and little bitty porch with that green fake grass carpet, that they used to put on that stuff. Had a wrought iron post at the edge of the porch, picture window. One tree in the yard, very picturesque positioning. It was just a perfect little 1-car garage, ranch style home. That's what I was seeing, and kind of blah, actually. So later that day I drove by, and the baby blue colored house was right next door. So it's like, oh, okay. So then I looked at that. I got 2 things wrong. The garage was on the opposite side that I saw, which is not uncommon to transpose things like that. It's that is one of the fallacies of this type of work, at least for me. And the paint was either a pale gray or a white, and what I had seen was the opposite of that. So those were the 2 things that were wrong. So from there, I decided to, hey, let's just go ahead and do this every week. This is going to be a nice research project for me. So I did 4 to 5 houses a week, and I would just drive, take a day and drive by all of those houses. And I became so sophisticated with it. Well, let me back up and say, either I was spot on or I was totally 100% inaccurate. Okay, so those were my 2. It was like either I was at the top or I wasn't at the top.
What was your odds? Were you 70%?
I was 85% correct on what I was getting. Yeah. But there was that 15% that, hey, it was just a shot in the dark, and you never know when you're going to be correct or incorrect on it. But at one point I'm thinking, well, there are only so many colors of houses, only so many styles. It's like you could, after a while, just be, kind of guesswork getting an awful lot of this right. So I decided to, like the last 6 months I was doing it, I would ask one final question of, okay, give me one thing at this location that 100% identifies it different than anything else around there, anything else that, no other place might have that identical thing. And I was seeing like a blue tarped boat in the right side in the backyard, something like that. At one point I saw this crazy looking thing. It was kind of an S right in the middle of the front yard that went around to the side. And I'm thinking sidewalk, because that would be like kind of normal, maybe. I knew this neighborhood wasn't a real fancy neighborhood. It wouldn't have been a big lot, that could have accommodated too much. So I'm thinking it's a sidewalk. But when I get there, it was actually the driveway. It was the strangest thing. It was the driveway came in right in the middle of the front of the house, turned left, circled around, and went to a garage on the left side. So I did see that S curve correctly. I was just, I just wasn't believing it was a driveway at all. So that was something. So I was seeing things like that. I would see ornate things in the yard, just unusual stuff, maybe an unusual car parked, on the side or something. Maybe not an unusual car, but in an unusual location, maybe permanently there, not licensed or something, But I was seeing all kinds of things like that. And so I practiced a lot, and I practiced with things that I could prove if I was right or if I was wrong. So then I started teaching it, because everything I do, I teach. So I started teaching remote viewing, teaching intuitive skills. I worked for 30 years as a health intuitive. And because, as you can see, houses, you can also see inside people's bodies. Now, I couldn't diagnose anything, so I did not diagnose anything. I could not, tell people what to do. If I did see something, I would just have to identify, okay, I see some lowered energy in this area, maybe go check that out, but I would have people call. And, this one woman called once, and she was experiencing some pain. She didn't believe in doctors, which is just crazy. But I could see that she had a really severe kidney infection or urinary tract infections, to the point that I was concerned for her life. And I kept urging her and trying to get her to get to an urgent care or get somewhere to get some antibiotics for this, because this was very important. It was the weekend, so it wasn't going to be super easy, but she could do it. I think I finally talked her into going, and I'm thinking, well, it may have saved her life. I don't know, but she was very ill, and I could see that. I couldn't tell her that she had a urinary tract infection to the degree that I thought it would possibly kill her, which I would never tell anyone that anyway. But that sort of thing was a fairly common thing for me to find. And when people are in distress, I would often get a call, well, what do you see? It's like, well, go to your doctor to get a diagnosis, but this is where I'm landing, in your body, that you're having some distress. And I would do these for people all over the world, people I never even talked to. I wouldn't even talk to them. Someone else would get a session for someone. Remember this little girl in Russia, and these people that I knew here, this little girl's father worked for them here in the States. And they called and said, okay, she's having some problems. We have permission. Would you do a session for this child? She was about 5 or 6. Now, I could see that she was very ill, but I didn't, they're young, I can't diagnose anything. But the thing that I could see was kind of where something starts. And I could see 2 years ago, I think it was, I'm not going to get that exactly right, 2 or 3 years prior, there had been something that took her parents' attention drastically away from her. And she had felt kind of abandoned, because at that age, you don't understand when your parents have to be doing something somewhere else. And I didn't know what that incident was. I didn't call it. I didn't say what it was. I just said something took her parents' attention drastically away from her, and she felt very abandoned at that point. And there was her immune system reduced, because that's what happens when we're in distress. And, at that point, it left her vulnerable to what then occurred later on. And sure enough, she had a sibling born at that time that was drastically ill. And her parents spent most of their time in the hospital with the child, so she was shuffled from either family members or babysitters or something like that for a couple of years. And so it had a toll on her, so those were the kinds of things I did as a health intuitive. But so that's my kind of my intuitive world. My bread and butter, my success has been both in the intuitive world and real estate investing, that I've made a success out of both of those businesses.
I, we're not going to have time to go through all this stuff. You have so much, and I have questions.
Okay.
So your intuition stuff, did that start when you were a kid? Did I miss that?
I think I just downplayed it a lot when I was a child, but I had impressions. My gut feelings I think I was really sensitive to my body, and that's where your gut feeling is going to come from. So you're sensitive and you're just aware of things, so I just kind of knew things in advance, is what I would just know, kind of things that were coming along in advance. And long before I got into real estate or doing any of the intuitive work, I was just writing about this actually. There's like this one part of intuition that seems to be just a gut feeling. And then there's another part of intuition that seems to be much, much more developed than that. But it all kind of is paying attention to your body language, the language that your body is trying to tell you internally. And eventually what I learned to do was I would speak my words and then listen to my heart, and it would tell me if that was a piece of truth or if I needed to throw that in the trash. So I could know things by just listening to how my body was responding to what I was saying. So it happened. It started early, but it really didn't develop hardcore until I was around 40, whenever I started doing this class. Otherwise, it was just kind of a hit and miss thing. I kind of knew things, but I didn't. I kind of did, but my body was speaking to me. I could feel it. I could know it. I could know when we were going to purchase a house. I would know what it would sell for. I would know things like that, but it was just kind of a feeling I had more than it was anything concrete. There was a point where that turned around with real estate, and this is probably one of the best examples I have. I had just come back from a 5-day retreat teaching at a healing center retreat with about 700 people. So it was one of my first experiences doing that. So, you come back with a little bit of an ego, and you come back with, an inflated whatever sense of yourself that you are, even though I have to have a pretty humble state because I have to get my heart involved in everything I do. So we came back, and, it was typical for us to go on Sundays to open houses for auctions that were going to come up, or houses that were for sale. And there was this rather large property. It was an 8,000 square foot home. And here in the Ozarks, that's a pretty large house. Not so much today, but back in 2005 it was, or 2004 when that happened. But it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon. We decided, hey, let's just go take a look at it. It was 222 acres. I remember there was all these twos involved in the acreage. And it had been a horse ranch. 3-story house, beautiful, with a big pool in the back, 3 huge horse barns, had a wrought iron fence at the gate that opened, double fence that opened, went up a hillside that was paved with trees on each side up to this beautiful house with a huge front porch. It was really gorgeous. This place had sold many times back in the 90s it sold 3 times, I think, for like close to $1 million. So that was what we were looking at. That was going to auction. So we go through the house and say, well, this is way out of our price range. We were fairly new. Well, in 2005, we weren't. I guess this happened back in the early 90s because we weren't totally new at this, but we didn't have cash sitting there because, everything was going back into investing in real estate. So we're looking through this house, and then we drive around the property. And at one point, just a download, this intuitive download, which is a different kind of way to get intuitive information. But the words just came out of my mouth faster than I could get them out of my mouth. And I said, this is going to sell for $300,000. My husband looks at me and he says, if this sells for $300,000, we need to buy it. Now, normally, you see, we wouldn't even approach buying this type of house. Normally, we were buying, maybe, up to maybe 100,000 at the most, that we were staying within. And in those days, you could buy property pretty reasonable. We were doing a lot of rehab, and resale and renting and just a lot of things like that. So here we are sitting on this information, be it real or not real, but I know when it comes in that fast, it's probably pretty concrete. But we had to take action because this thing's going to sell in 3 weeks, and we're going to have the money intact at that point in time. So we went to the bank. qualified for the loan, but we needed X amount of dollars down payment in order to even bid on it. We didn't even have that much cash sitting there. So it's like, okay, we got 3 weeks, right? Without, and this is the honest to God's truth. You don't have to believe me, but this did happen. It was amazing to us too. We had 2 little properties. We didn't even try to get the money. We didn't even have days intact long enough to even try to get the down payment. 2 people called within the same week. One wanted to buy the small little Quonset hut garage we owned off of a commercial street. And it was a neighbor that lived close by, wanted to buy that little garage so we could control the property, had cash, could close in a week. Another little storage building we had, a guy had looked at it about a year before, decided didn't want it. Suddenly he decides he can't live without it. He calls, he's got cash, he wants to close that week. So we have 2 properties we closed within that time frame that we had to have the down payment for this property, and thus we had the amount of money we needed for the down payment. Now we progress on to the auction day. It is so crowded. The entire farming community, this was a ranch, remember, came out that day. The living room was enormous and it was packed. You couldn't even breathe in there. And I'm standing there, kind of nervous about the whole situation, but they started kind of low bidding, as is normal in auctions. And we didn't start bidding until we got around 250, maybe 200, 250,000, somewhere around that ballpark. And it was slowly going up, going up. And we had the bid at 300,000. And I swear we did not have that bid for more than 3 seconds until the auctioneer said sold 300,000. And we walked away with it at 300,000. So It was like, okay, this stuff works if you listen to it. So it was like, I kind of took it to an obsession of learning how to do it, but it seriously paid off.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
pretty awesome.
All right. So, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about, intuition is probably a skill that everybody has. We don't tune into it. We don't realize it. I think women get gut feelings more than men do for some reason. But animals, I mean, they know when tornadoes are coming. They know when tsunamis are coming. You start seeing them 3 days before the news hits. I mean, there's something there. So you teach people how to dig deep,
Yes.
and figure it out themselves.
Yeah, I do. I teach people, well, for years, I taught people how to be more aware of their body-mind relationship, so they could be more attuned with their physical system. We're so disconnected from our bodies that, we don't even know half the time when we have pain, much less. I remember there was a woman that came to my house one day and I was doing a session for her and I mentioned the pain in her knee and she thought, I don't have pain in my knee, but she left. She didn't tell me that. She left, she drove the 2 hours back home and she thought, I don't know where she was getting off on saying I had pain in my knee. I don't have any more pain in my knee than I ever have. And then it dawned on her, she had been suffering from pain in her knees for weeks. She just hadn't been acknowledging it, So sometimes it's just a matter of getting in touch with the information. Yeah, we're just so disconnected with nature, our bodies, all of this, that we're just not there. So for some reason, I was probably sensitive to my body all my life. And I think that's a lot of where this came from.
I know I'm disconnected from my body. I mean, my wife told me I'm lactose intolerant. I'm like, I don't feel good. She's like, she was tracking, she was figuring it out and she got it. We have 5 acres. I love cutting wood. I love working outside, but I will work until I collapse because I'm enjoying it and I don't know when to stop. And I have no mind-body connection. I know that. Yeah. I'm the opposite of what you are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Opposite.
Yeah. Well, that was more my husband. He was more like that as well. So we made a good team because, I was like the visionary that kind of could see things and trends and things like that. Even the 2007 crash that happened in real estate, I got that message. It was probably around 2003, maybe 4, that there again, it was a download. I remember exactly where I was. I was in the car. And suddenly, it was like, you need to sell all your properties. And it's like, what do you mean I need to sell all my properties? It's like I was arguing with that one because that was our bread and butter. It's like, how in the world are we going to sell all those properties? No, it's no way. But come 2005, beyond circumstances that had anything to do with that, I owned absolutely not one drop of property, went all the way through all of that crash, everything didn't harm me in the least. 2009 started reinvesting. So it was true, and I was very aware that I didn't know why I should sell it. All I knew was you need to get out of real estate now. It was a vulnerability was sitting there in the market.
Yeah.
I couldn't consciously have told you what that was.
Wow. All right. So I don't know how to ask this. Do you have any feelings about my wife's health?
Oh, well, I'm not doing a health intuitive session for it right now.
Okay.
This would be bad circumstance. What is your name? And I'll see if anything at all is coming through.
Natalie.
Natalie. There's a lot. I have to get in touch with just a really deep part of a large part of this actually works from compassion, because there's a connection that you make when you have empathy and compassion with someone. You begin to feel their body. You begin to understand who they are. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I see is there's some lowered energy, but it seems to be pelvic or stomach to pelvic is where I'm feeling that a little bit of a lowered energy in that particular area of your body. That's where my attention went first. Anyway, I didn't do the scan though. I have a system that I do. I see a silhouette of a body, and I go from the top of the head and I scan ever so slowly down. And whenever I can't go, then I go into that area. And then I'll do that several times in the body. Sometimes people call with a specific issue they want me to look at, and sometimes it's just a general scan. So.
Yeah. No, you got it right. That's about right. Yeah.
And it's the feeling. There again, it was the feeling. My body tells me. My body actually felt where to go. That was it. Drew my physical system drew my attention immediately to like the gut and all the way down to the pelvic region. That was where there was a tightness that I felt in that area immediately. So that was what I was feeling.
Yeah, that is wild. That's crazy.
Smiling.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? That kind of makes me feel good because sometimes I've been going to doctors for years, and sometimes I just feel like I'm going crazy. So
the last doctor that went to did
oh
that.
yeah. No, let me tell you a story. Exactly. I can so relate to that. Long before I started doing anything in the health intuitive field, I had a health intuitive session by someone that I didn't even know them, but I thought their words were pretty profound. But I had had a health issue for years, and no doctor had ever been able to actually diagnose it or do a thing about it. So I just, something that would periodically pop up. It wasn't like a constant. It would just periodically pop up, and we just never could get to the root of it. She nailed it in like 2 minutes. She went straight to the point and said, okay, this is what's happening, and this is what you can do about it, and this is the emotion that you feel that causes it. And she was so right. Oh my gosh, she was so right. So from then on, when I would get tension, my body, if I would get upset about something or be stressed about something, mostly it was anger, that my body would tighten up. You get that stress in it, and it would cause a valve in my intestinal tract to close down. And it would back up substance because everything was shut down. So that was what was happening. And, if I started going into that emotional state, if I could just relax and not go there, that wouldn't happen. Yeah. It just, and I was able to completely get over all of that. I mean, it just went away, because I didn't go back into that same state over and over again, like I had. So now when my father passed, during the period of time he was passing, I noticed that it was starting to like slowly come back. And it was like, oh no. But it was stress from, he had a brain tumor, and, he's going to go through, he had hospice, and, it was a stressful period of time. My mother had a stroke. So we also had that going on. So it was it's just a stressful period of time. So my body was under that kind of stress, and I could feel that same tightness beginning to take hold. So our body responds.
Well, that's crazy, because as a magician, I'm like, all right, well, that's the biggest part of her body. I mean, all right, so I'm poo-pooing it, right?
Yeah.
But we just had a friend die of a brain tumor.
Oh my, yeah.
I have a hurt foot.
Yeah.
Could have went anywhere, and you went right. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird. Good job. Good magic trick. I don't know.
I mean, you
but I'm
may
thinking
notice
in my
my
head,
entire
wow.
disposition changed, because what I have to do, I'm going to tell you, years of doing this, It's like it has to be heart to heart. It has to be compassion, and then you blend with them, and it's almost like you become the same person. I remember one time a friend of mine, this is going to make my face turn red probably, but a friend of mine asked me to do a session for an actor friend of hers that was coming into town. I'd never met him. And he was acting at a tent theater play at the university. It was his old college that he had gone to, his university in Springfield. So we went to, the first time I met him, I'd done this session for him. She'd given him the session. And then we met up afterwards, and she wanted to introduce me to him and all this stuff, and he said, wow, he told her later, it's like, wow, she seemed so shy, it's like, what you don't understand. It was like, it's almost like when you are that intimate with someone, it's almost like you've had sex with them or seen them naked, because you are so closely attuned to who they are. And not only, physically who they are, but emotionally and mentally and all their vulnerabilities, So I had touched on several things that he had asked about that were kind of vulnerable. So I was feeling a little intimidated, I think, by meeting him under those circumstances. So
Yeah.
Wow.
it's a very intimate, it's an intensely intimate experience that you have. So I never invade anyone's space without their permission, because it's just none of my business. That's why I didn't go into that house and explore. I wanted to be on the outside of the house when I first started doing remote viewing,
Yeah.
Well, getting back to remote viewing, for our listeners that don't know, the U.S. government had, do you know more detail than that than I can say? But they did programs on remote viewing for decades.
Yeah, many years, yes, many years.
And they had like 70 to 85% as well.
They did very well with their, and they were so detailed. So much detail came in. They would do, like, with remote viewing, the technical remote viewing, which I have learned to do that since and do teach it in its proper form. But they would have up to like 65 pages. It might take a day or more than one day to do one target, because they would get so much detail about things. And they were drawing and doing diagrams and things like that on machines and technical, engineered things. And I really don't get into doing that. I have described a few things with AI that I didn't know, and then I would do the homework, research it, and it's like, yeah, there it is. I could see it. I could, it was the images would be there that I drew, but I don't know that consciously. I may have seen it somewhere subconsciously, but I don't remember. But there are lots and lots of questions that are beyond the scope of what my conscious mind knows. It's just, there's so much information out there.
Well, one more question, and please don't think I'm rude. I'm not trying to make it like a magic trick. What do you think about AI? What does your gut tell you? Because I have people say it's awful, it's going to destroy everything. And I have other people saying it's just going to revamp the world, and it's just going to be like the introduction of the television, or just going to make our lives easier. I don't know, like Industrial Revolution,
Right.
I think it'll be somewhere in the middle of all that. I don't think, I think it's going to be slowly accepted. Do you remember when computers came out and everyone said, oh, this is just going to, change everything. Well, it was a long day before everyone had a personal computer in their house, from the 70s till everyone had a personal computer in their house. It took a while. So I think that's kind of where we are with AI. It's going to take a while before most industries can afford to bring it in and let it take over completely. I think it'll take a little while before a lot of industries will think in terms of, do I want everything to be computerized, or do I want to keep a human element here, in my life? So I think it will be a slow moving process in some areas. In other areas, it'll probably go really fast. I think it will definitely revamp our world when it does become saturated everywhere. I think there are going to be a lot of jobs lost. We're moving into a super digital age. I think, and I have looked at this. I have remote viewed this. I have, seen some information at least about it. But I think that a lot of the jobs will be difficult for AI to really be programmed to do well. So there'll be a lot of jobs that they won't do. I think that the higher end jobs that kind of oversee the AI will be the ones that people want to go for, because those will definitely still be there, run by a person probably of some sort. I think there are a lot of glitches that will happen with AI, and there's going to be a lot of going back to the drawing board with it, because I don't know if you use it at all now, but I can throw something out there and it's like, oh, are you kidding me? No, that's right. So I think a lot of it is just, it's not quite there yet, but it will be.
Do you think people 20 years from now, 30 years from now, universal basic income, how are people going to live if everything gets taken over?
There will be new jobs, I'm sure, that come about somewhat.
There's
I don't know how, I don't know what, but also, and this just popped in, and I have not looked at this, but and there again, is this my intuition talking or just me off the top of my head? I'm not going to say what it is. I don't know for sure. I think population is going to go down quite a bit. So I think that that's one of the things that will possibly happen. I think that there will be, smaller communities of people, most likely. And in those small communities, the people with the majority of money will kind of own how that's set up, and everyone else will have minor jobs, probably a lot of working from home, doing various things. But there won't be the assistant sitting at the computer. There won't be the legal assistant. There won't be even maybe lawyers. I mean, there will be some people who understand the basics of law, but I think there will be an awful lot. I mean, we're already gone to doctors doing just virtual visits. I mean, it's like they're not even in the hospitals anymore. A friend of mine just had a gallbladder surgery, and she said she was shocked. There on the screen were the doctors didn't even come in. They were in another town, a complete, hundreds of miles away. So we're already sort of virtual in lots of ways anyway. So
my friend, the eye surgeon I was telling you about, he said that we're going to have virtual doctors is going to be the next wave, and he died pre-COVID. So he saw that coming. Yeah. And I was like, what? How do you have you just take your like with your health stuff, you take your blood work or your urine and you drop it off at a clinic, and then your doctor looks at the numbers, and they never shake your hand. They never see you.
They never see you. It's very, very impersonal. So, when I grew up in the country, I mean, I grew up backwoods. We had an old country doctor that actually came to my house, and I was birthed at home. That's the truth. This guy was so attuned, so aware of, the physical system. And, when I would have, some kind of, lung issues, respiratory issues as a child, he would come to our house. He would actually work on massaging my back until it all broke up and kind of, I was breathing well again. And we definitely lost that. We lost that within a few years after I was born. But I think we've lost that. And talk about losing the intuitive touch that doctors have. There's a way that somebody can just look at you if they can actually see the color of your skin, your eyes, the tone of your voice. They can read volumes into that. We've lost that, and we have so become almost non-human. We're almost robotic at this point. So I really hate to see us go down that route, but I think it's true. That's where we're headed, at least in the Western culture.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So we have I don't know, almost 10 minutes left.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead.
All right. So a lot of your intuition stuff you're saying is that you can see or not see, but it's information like the real estate thing. That was for later. Get rid of all your properties because later you're gonna, and it's all like future or right now. Can you see how they have the people who go back and be like, oh, this person murdered this person, or this is what happened with that? Is that something that's real, or is that not? Can you see backwards or only?
Well, I don't know that I've done anything way back. I've had a lot of people. I remember a woman, her son had been arrested for murder. And she came and I said, don't tell me much. I don't want to know the story. But she asked me to see if I could see if her son actually did murder. And it was her father's, would have been her son's grandfather. And so I just went into that scene, and that's all I knew. And I saw someone in a white top, white pants come earlier in the evening. I saw a lot of people come and go. I saw that person come and then left. And then I saw a woman and two children, I think it was, come, and they left. I saw a young boy, younger than the other two anyway, come. He had a ball cap turned backwards. I saw him in the house. I described the furniture in the house. I even saw this little red and white little ice chest sitting down beside the sofa. I remember describing everything in the living room. I remember seeing that young man leave, and I saw the man with the white outfit come later again that night. The next thing I saw were police officers there, and I saw a shooting. I saw where the bullet holes were in the bedroom. I saw where the bullet holes were in the living room. And those are the things that I saw. I refused to look at exactly who killed him, but I said I would bet money that young man did not kill him. He just didn't seem threatening. He wasn't angry. The man in the white outfit was angry. I could feel his anger while he was there. I felt like more likely he was the one, but there have been several people come and go that night, but it was the young man that was arrested. Whenever I finished the session, there were lots of things she could verify it, that exactly where the bullet holes were correct, the little red and white ice chest even. She knew who the person in the white outfit was. It was another brother, that was her brother. He just gotten out of a mental institution. And she suspected that he had been the one because he had a lot to gain financially from killing his father. The woman and the two girls, they knew that they had been there that night. So all of that happened. So that isn't very far back. You know, this was one of those things. He had been arrested not long before this, but you know, but I was able to recreate that scene thoroughly.
Wow.
Do you know the ending? Do you know?
Yeah, he was arrested and he was convicted. Yeah.
The person in the white outfit?
No.
No. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was unfortunate, but
Yeah. Well, shoot.
All right. So
again, I could have seen it wrong too. You know, I mean, that could have been that 15%, you know, fallacy rate could have been right there. And yeah, he did do it, but boy, he just had such non-threatening behavior that night that I saw.
And the mental institution, he might just carry anger around with him for whatever problem he has. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the grandson didn't have anything to gain, and the son did. So.
Yeah. And you don't know these people. I mean,
no, I had no idea. I had no idea who they were.
All right. So I want to know about TV personality. We only have 10 minutes and I'm going to.
Okay. I did an Anomalies TV show, and then I later turned that into a radio show for about a year. I interviewed people like, and these are going to be old names, but Stanton Friedman in the UFO field, Linda Moulton Howe, Nancy Talbot, did a lot of research on crop circles, things of that nature. A lot of scientists. Dr. Claude Swanson was on the show. People from the remote viewing program that we just talked about, the military guys, you know, some of them were on the show, and their wives that did really good remote viewing. So it was all about anomalies, but a lot of it revolved around remote viewing or intuitive skills, or it revolved around UFOs. So that was.
So can people still find that anywhere?
Oh, no, that's not out there at all. That was in the 90s. Most recently, when my mom died in 2017, and I was like, okay, we've gone through 5 years with my parents, and I just stopped doing everything. I was capable of doing that other than the real estate investing. So I spent 5 years with them until they passed. And then after that, it was like, well, what am I going to do now? So I realized that on my bucket list of things I haven't yet done, I really wanted to make documentary films. So I started making documentary films. So that's what I did from 2018 until fairly recently, that I wrote the book, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, and getting back into doing some of this type of work that I kind of put on the shelf for quite a while.
All right. So that's a good intro, golly, to your new book. So tell us about your new book.
Well, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, it's superpowered intuition. So that's what that stands for. And it's really about my life. It's about back engineering what I've done in my life, like seeing that something's going to sell for $300,000 and getting it for $300,000. And then being able to take the physics behind that. I have a physics friend that we worked together for a lot of years, but when I started back engineering my life experience, we started saying, okay, what would back that up in the world of physics? You know, what would make that for sure, you know, be something that might happen? Part of the book has, you know, a theory behind it because we couldn't 100% back it up. Part of it is like, yeah, we know that that is something that's measurable. We think I'm working with, and most people are intuitive, and if you get really attuned to it, working with something called torsion energy, which works with past, present, and future. You know, as something is in the past starts to break down, then it's going to rebuild itself somewhere as in order in the future. So as something breaks down on a quantum level, it's going to rebuild it's going to rebuild itself. Energy is going to go somewhere else and order itself in a different fashion or different way. I think I just got looped into that torsion energy and just really harnessed an ability to be very attuned to it. That's what I mean. So that's what the book's about, but it does have some good exercises if people want to get started learning how to do some of the things that I do. Not everyone's going to have the discipline to do it the way that I did it, but certainly you can start somewhere. Just the tiniest little bit of listening to your body. You began to develop a dialogue, and the dialogue I did. I could ask you a question, get an answer. Ask you a question, get an answer. That's what I learned to do.
Wow. All right. So let's talk about manifesting a little bit.
Okay.
I am so much of a skeptic. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So I'll tell you what little manifesting I did. Heard The Secret, and I had a little notebook in the car, and I said, in my future home, I want to have like a little BB gun thing, where you an old Western thing, an old Western house. Mm-hmm. And then daggone it, this house, we have a little BB gun range that kind of just fell into place, just like that. And I can show you in that little marble notebook where I drew that little BB gun range.
Money.
I'm telling you, I don't know. And, I hear stories about Jim Carrey saying he manifested his first $1 million check. He talks about it all the time. Yep. But I think if I have that skeptic in my head talking louder than the other thing, that might be my downfall. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the book talks about this. It talks about this is part of what we really think probably is how it works. That consciousness is, works with light, and our body actually has, biophotons of lots of light. But when a person is in deep concentration, doing any kind of, telekinesis or doing any kind of deep state concentration, the body produces more of these biophotons. And that produces torsion energy. Now, torsion energy is something that's proven. That's not a question. Torsion energy is proven. We don't know 100% the body produces that, but we think the body produces that. The sun produces. Russia, there again, they've got a handle on everything. They have actually patents that use this torsion energy. Torsion energy is the energy that works between a system that's breaking down and one that's building up. And they first discovered it in the 50s when they saw star systems. There would be one star system breaking down, and they would see another one simultaneously building up. It was like energy went from here to here, almost like if you have a log that's on fire, you see the log disintegrating, but you see heat rising, or you feel heat rising. It's going from one ordered, it's breaking down the order in one state and become ordered somewhere else. It never goes away completely. So I think that that manifesting is really being fine-tuned to that process, when something's breaking down and something's building up. Now, if I said, okay, I want to be an astrophysicist, and I sit here and visualize that every day, all day, and said, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, I promise you that would not happen. Because it's not something that is in my wheelhouse to be able to even begin to create. But if you can get attuned with, okay, what's breaking down here, what's building up here, and can I get in the middle of that and be able to attain that? That's what happened, I think, with that property that we purchased. It was going to sell. It had the potential of selling that cheaply. And we were there. If we were able to capture that moment, we could own it for that price. So I like to call it, I don't know if you guys did this or not. You may be too young to remember, but when I was young, they used to have these huge big ropes, and we would jump rope, and they would have this jump rope going on the playground. But boy, you had to get the timing just right, or you'd get flipped over and just, fall down or whatever. So you had to get your bearings, and you knew exactly when you were going to run into that jump rope, and you could just jump all day long as you stayed in rhythm with it, right? And then you could go out. It's a matter of timing and rhythm and harmony with what's available out there. And that's part of the Spire way to power and success, is getting in rhythm with what's available and when it's available. And when you can get in the mix of that, that is superpower. I think that's what I learned to do. And it was one of those things early on I began to notice was what I called the silver platter of opportunity. It was like I would ask for something, I would just be talking, I want this, and the silver platter of opportunity would show up, and it's like, what I did with it was entirely up to me. That happened when I wanted my brainwaves tested. I said, wow, I really, really need to know what I'm doing when I'm under this hypnotic state. I need to know what state of mind I'm in at what point. I got a call within days from this institution that were studying this very thing. Someone had told them about me out of the blue, and they said, we'd like to invite you down. We'd like to research your brain, what you're doing. And she said, but you will have to have this brain scan to do this. And I go, oh my gosh, I was just saying I wanted that. So time and time again, So it happens as we become in alignment with it, I think. But it was probably always sitting there available, The astrophysicist, I'm never going to be that. That's not sitting there available for me. So that's out of my league, But I can work within what I am inclined to be able to do or want to do. And I'm not saying that can't be large. It can be large scale. But reasonably so, it has to be available. But I learned to go in and say, okay, is this available? Is this available? Or when will it be available? Where will it be available? I do my shopping that way. I do my Christmas shopping. It's like, okay, I'm looking for this thing. Where can I go? I scan, I find it, go there. Eliminates a lot of time.
You need to learn that. That would save us.
We got to know what you want to buy
days
for Christmas, So yeah.
Oh man.
You do. Yeah. When my mom had her stroke, we had 1 week to prepare my house to bring her home. She was in a wheelchair. We had to have a ramp. And it's like, I said, okay, I need this ramp. I looked at one ad on Facebook Marketplace. Some guy had a ramp. He was willing to deliver it, got it delivered and installed within a day.
Right. Yeah.
So it's that kind of saving of time, where you just, I need this now and it's present. But I think there's a rhythm to it. There's an internal and an external rhythm that you get into to be in harmony with those things to manifest.
Yeah, I like the jump rope idea. That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm and a way that you just get in sync with it.
I can't believe it's been an hour already. It flew by. It flew by.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about your other books. You've written 4 books.
Mm-hmm.
So on our podcast, on our Facebook group, we will put all of your links to all of your stuff. Make sure you send all that to me and I'll upload all those and share all those.
I will. Yes. Yeah. The books can be purchased on Amazon, but you can also go to my website and just call me directly and I can mail them to you as well.
But look up Linda Eastburn.
Yes.
Yes, it's Burn.
Linda, thank you so much for being on.
Yes,
You were awesome. Thank you. Only thing we have left to say is see you next week.
Check us out online at wesisley.com and patreon.com/Wes_Isley for behind-the-scenes videos, blooper videos, never-before-seen footage, discounts on merchandise, magic trick tutorials, and more. That's Wes Iseli, spelled Wesiseli.